So this is the story of how I came to own not only an ethical piece of fashion, but a piece of rock and roll memorabilia. Anyone who knows me even relatively well knows that I'm a huge fan of the late great Pete Burns. I own many pieces of Pete Burns memorabilia, signed photos. I also own quite a lot of his early vinyl recordings. This was an independent single that was released in, I think, 1980, which is called Number 11. I have everything they've ever released, all the collections, all the limited editions and box sets. I first became a fan in 1983 when I heard the single What I Want. I was really enamored with Pete Burns's androgynous appearance. There was a real kind of, the press called it the gender bender era, which was kind of Boy George, Marilyn, Pete Burns, Steve Strange, all these kind of cross-dressing androgynous pop stars that were in the charts. But I always found Pete Burns the most intriguing on an aesthetic level. Obviously wore a lot of makeup and had long hair, which was quite shocking in 1983, 1984. But he had a very masculine energy, and that came through in his voice. He had this huge booming, growling voice, which was in complete contrast to his outward appearance, but somehow it just merged together and just worked. Boy George was more kind of doll-like. Marilyn was more kind of sexy, starlet kind of looking. Steve Strange was more Blitz Club and more theatrical. But with Pete Burns, it just seemed really natural, as if it was very organic, the way that he looked in conjunction with his voice and his performance. So when his biggest hit, You Spin Me Round, came out in 1984, I was just sold. I was a fan for life, because I love electronic music, I love disco music, I love dance music, and it was their music was just so hard and so gritty and danceable. Absolute mega fan from that moment on, right up until this day. I also loved his attitude. He really didn't give a damn what anybody thought about him. And people say that all the time. I don't care what people think about me. But he literally did not give a damn what anybody thought of him. He was Pete. He was himself. And that was it. And if you didn't like it, he didn't care. It was his way or the highway. As a teenager, and a teenager who was really looking for an identity and trying to figure life out, that was a really strong positive message to have, to really believe in yourself and not care what anybody else thinks, and to be true to yourself and to be a true individual, which I think is something that is really sorely lacking in today's pop culture. There are very few individuals. A lot of, music artists now, pop artists, they really are contrived and really are manipulated and invented, really, by the record labels just to make money. They're like a kind of conveyor belt of boxes of cornflakes, and you just choose the flavour. But really, when you open the packet, they're all the same inside. Pete Burns was a true original, a complete one-off. And in my not so humble opinion, a musical genius. A lot of people don't know about Pete Burns and his band Dead or Alive was that they were massively successful all around the world. They had a handful of hit records in the UK, and then rather than the UK becoming tired of them, they became tired of the UK, and they actually went further abroad. They were absolutely huge in Japan and Asia. In 1989, Michael Jackson had to reschedule his tour around their tour because they were so popular in Japan. And one of their singles, called Turn Around and Count to 10, was actually #1 in Japan for 17 weeks. So if you think of the population of Japan as opposed to, say, a European country like the UK or France, the population of Japan, 17 weeks at #1, that is a lot of records sold. So the next time somebody says to you that Pete Burns was a one-hit wonder with You Spin Me Round, just let them know 8 albums all across the world, 40 million records sold, absolute legends. And just to give you an indication of the effect he had on my life, when he sadly passed away in 2016, I was 46 years old, and my own mother was on holiday in Fuerteventura, and she actually called me to make sure I was okay when she heard the news. So, to fashion and to the look. So, Pete Burns almost exclusively wore Vivienne Westwood from around 1980 onwards. His collection was massive. Vintage pieces, one-off pieces, couture pieces. He was a huge fan of Vivienne Westwood. But in fact, he only actually met her, I think, twice. Aesthetic and her design. He considered her a genius. So after he passed away, his partner, Michael, decided to sell and auction a lot of his clothes because obviously there was too much to keep. And a very good friend of mine, who is also a Westwood collector, had been buying some pieces from Michael. So, and he would buy them in such large amounts that Michael would occasionally put in just some extra pieces as gifts. So one day I got home from work and there was a card through the door from Royal Mail. I'd missed the post and I had to go to the postal office, the postal sorting office, to collect this item because it was too big to get through the door, the letterbox. It was a bag about this big, and I thought, oh, what on earth is this? I got home, opened it up, and lo and behold, this beautiful African collection bag was there. So straight away, the library of my mind remembered seeing some paparazzi shots of Pete in Iceland when he was filming a reality TV show or a documentary or something. And I remember seeing the bag. So the bag is part of the Made in Kenya collaboration collection, which the Vivienne Westwood Company set up workshops in Kenya for craftspeople to use their skills and in order to drive an economy within small towns and villages in Kenya. It's what they call micro producers, which are in communities across Africa. And it's in conjunction with the EFI, the Ethical Fashion Initiative. And the pigment that is used in the bags is made from 70% recycled clothing, which is ground into a powder to then create the pigment. And for the lining, it's made a patchwork of different scraps of fabrics. Which would be left over from different collections. So you can imagine my surprise and delight when I received this as a gift. It's not only is it a piece of memorabilia from my hero, but it's also gone some way to be supporting small communities, these micro producers, and developing and supporting small economies in towns and villages across Africa. I do own some other pieces of Vivienne Westwood that were owned by Pete. I've got a squiggle shirt, a long sleeve t-shirt. I've got some headbands, one's branded and one's chaos. And I've got some arm warmers as well, which I think are active resistance. Yeah, I've got a few pieces from Pete Burns' collection. So I hope you've enjoyed that video. The reason I made it was because whenever I use the bag, I always get people commenting on it and saying what an unusual, interesting graphic. And obviously a lot of people do recognize the orb print. It's a real treasure to me. I try not to use it all the time because obviously I want to keep it for years to come. But yeah, it is a real treasure. So if you haven't already, please subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.